All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Paco LeBron. I am the host of MSP Unplugged podcast, and I'm happy to be here to talk a little bit about security that doesn't suck. This is brought to you by our good friends over at BitLyft, Whitehat, and Ascent Portal. And really, this is going to be the MSP's no BS guide to finding the right cybersecurity solution. But before we go into introductions and things of that nature, there's a couple of little housekeeping items as well. If this is your first time using the platform, take a look at the bottom. If you have any questions, there's going to be a questions tab right over there. That's where we want you to enter all of your questions for our esteemed guest that we have here that I'll be moderating, and we'll get into that panel here in a bit. We also are going to want to poll you and understand a little bit more on how we can provide you the most value. So if you go ahead and see on that bottom right-hand corner, you will see a polls button as well. Take a look at that. We will be going time to time just to make sure that we get not only information from you, and so we can make this as an interactive presentation webinar as much as possible, because we all know there are dry webinars and there are webinars with these two fellas. So we're going to make sure we have the most out of it from here. But let me go ahead and introduce our first panelist. We have Jason Miller. Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and everything that you do?
Sure. So this is going to be a wet webinar. That's what we've described, not dry. But no, thank you, Paco. My name is Jason Miller. I'm the founder and CEO of BitLyft Cybersecurity. We're located in Lansing, Michigan, and we fall into the category of an MDR, but what I would call us is a complete managed detection and response done differently. There's a lot of MDR companies out in the space these days. We started back in 2016, late 2016, and we really started around SIEM and log management, and it quickly evolved into much more. You know, our customers were wanting more expansive services and automation, and so which led us to really build what we call BitLyft Air, and it helps focus expertise and subject matter expertise around the SIEM, but it also brings automation in orchestration and really elevating the skill set of the security engineers and security analysts that are trying to defend the networks every day. So that's a brief description about me and BitLyft.
Awesome. And then our other panelist, I feel needs no introduction. You've been seeing him quite a bit on the socials. He was recently on our podcast as well. Jason will be coming on here shortly, but let's go ahead and show a little bit of love of Val King. Val, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you have going on and a little bit about both Whitehat and Ascent?
Sure. Thank you, Paco. Val King, CEO of Whitehat Virtual Technologies and Ascent Portal. Whitehat is a managed services provider that several years ago went through the pain of trying to build our own cybersecurity stack. And out of that came Ascent Portal, which helped us address the governance, risk, and compliance side for clients. Also former CIO of a regional bank and CIO of a regional healthcare system in Texas. So really looking forward to talking through some of the journey we went through. Wish I had known some of the things I know today at the beginning, and hopefully some of that's what we can impart to you guys today as you're on your journey of figuring out how to make security not suck. So thanks, Paco.
Awesome. Now, before we kind of go into a little bit of our presentation, I want to do a poll of the audience. I want to see really if you head over to that polls button. Our first question is really to talk about what's your biggest pain point as an MSP. Is it boosting MRR without technical hassles? Is it handling compliance and cybersecurity insurance? Is it saving time and finding effective solutions? Or is none of the above? There's something else that's on your mind that's a big pain point. Go ahead and submit your vote there as well. So let's give a couple minutes there for you to enter your vote, and we'll kind of go dive into a little bit about what is affecting you all as your biggest pain point. All right, see, we have a few coming in here. Give it about a minute or so. And for those that just are joining us, there is a polls button right on the bottom right-hand corner. Feel free to go ahead and click that and submit your vote there.
Yeah, and then please let us know what you're thinking. I mean, of the last several events I've done, it's been how do you sell this? How do you price the security packages? How do you begin to add that capability to your own stack, your own organization? How do you refine it? So there's not a bad question. Again, we're trying to, at the end of the day, help you guys get a handle on security for your business and how to make it effective and make it a functional part. Your customers need it. Everybody's got to have cybersecurity insurance, and there's security requirements that come along with it. So we want to make sure that, to the best of our ability here, we can help you guys get your arms wrapped around it, maybe close some gaps, and figure out how to get there. So don't be shy. I mean, ask away. That's what we're here for.
Yep. And so it looks like that on the top of the poll here, we have handling compliance cybersecurity insurance, followed by boosting MRR and saving time, finding effective solutions as well. So funny enough, we're going to go ahead and actually talk about literally all three. And so I think these are going to be big topics that we all want to really just dive into and just understand that these are really the top three pain points of not only of what we've surveyed outside of the webinar, but also obviously here that, and it shows that it is resonating with those that are attending. From all this, we're going to try and break those down and kind of really figure out and just hopefully share a little bit more insight on some of those, on these three that we have here from there. But let's go ahead and dive in first to the first one. Obviously, one of the pain points is how to increase MRR, maintaining a strong competitive edge without the burden of complex technicalities. Jason, I'm going to go ahead and toss this over to you just to say, what's your insight on this one being one of the top pain points for MSPs right now?
I think a lot of organizations, MSPs are looking to increase their MRR. I mean, all of us are at the end of the day. What MSP doesn't want to increase, their monthly recurring revenue? But oftentimes it's like how to go to a customer and explain, hey, you need this yet another thing, right? You need, and oftentimes it leads to, we've got to start with an education, understanding the client. I was doing a conversation, a live stream last week, and we were talking around how to actually just educate your customer first and foremost, and that is understanding their business, understanding what risks their business has, and then wrapping around, basically a custom security solution that is fit, it's form fit to their business. And ultimately, if you do that, you're going to see additional MRR come from it, because you as the MSP are talking about their business, you're interested in their business, you are focused around their business needs and making sure that you have their business well understood. And then you can start to speak to how you can reduce the risk of their business, making sure that the risk is more palatable. I think everybody, when we look at customers and we look at, the total amount of customers that you have, all of those different customers are going to have different risk tolerances, right? You've got, attorneys that understand risk really good. And so legal, you have banking industry, you've got maybe power and energy companies, water companies, the municipalities, right? So as you look at your customer base, you're going to need to understand, who they are and what they are, but also understand like what solutions are you going to bring to them. It's not just a one size fits all, essentially here, right? So some of what's in your security stack that can increase the MRR may be applicable to them. Some of it may not be applicable to them, right? Because they won't buy it. So I really think understanding the customer is extremely important, and it's first and foremost.
Awesome. Val, I know that you've been obviously have been not only an MSP for quite some time, but also dove into the cloud and being able to virtualize and things that at an early stage. Can you talk a little bit about how adopting new solutions or kind of seeing what's coming up from what you can kind of see forward and embracing what the future is holding and helping that increase your MRR and maintaining the strong competitive edge as well?
Sure. And thanks for saying I'm old, Paco. Love you, man. Love you.
The business.
Hey, I understand. I didn't get these gray hairs out of nowhere. I've earned them all. So, I mean, look, you can make yourself look stupid as an MSP. You don't need a vendor's help, which is one of my favorite lines. So how do you maintain a strong competitive advantage? If you've got security expertise in the house, great. If not, then you need to go find a partner, because cybersecurity is a table stakes piece now. It used to be toss in a little antivirus, toss in some anti-malware, and call it a day. And that ship has sailed. And so if you're still there, now you got a problem. Now you have to take inventory of your team and see, do I have the capability within my staff and the bandwidth to take on security, or do I need to find a good partner that I can trust to make me look good, to fill the gaps? And then where would I start? And kind of looking forward, I would look straight to cybersecurity insurance, which I think came out of one of the questions. So as of today, roughly 50% of organizations have cybersecurity insurance, that coming from the insurance industry themselves. And what we're seeing is, over the last 3 years, those premiums have gone up roughly 100%, because there have been so many claims, and the only way the insurance companies have been able to deal with it is to jack the rates. So now you're seeing those surveys come to you every year to review and fill out on behalf of your customer, which is probably a 5 or 10 minute conversation by itself, to help them figure out how to get a cyber policy in place. So for you, what should be in your stack? Look straight to your customers' cybersecurity policies and pick out those pieces that their insurance companies are going to require of them, and make that part of your base stack. And that's going to be a driver. If they don't want to, that's going to help you pull through those projects, because this isn't a matter of want to, don't want to. It's a matter of, if you want a cybersecurity policy, if you want to have a backstop for a breach, then these are the technologies you're going to have to put in place. So that's where I would say to start, to where you were headed with that, Paco, in terms of what the future is. I think you're going to see cybersecurity insurance be a heavy driver in our industry going forward, the same way you see insurance driving the healthcare experience today, the same way you see insurance driving the auto industry. And you can't have a car without insurance. I think you're looking at groups that ultimately are going to hold the money from all these premiums, and they're going to ultimately dictate what we're doing to mitigate that risk. So for you, that's a great place to start. What do I do today? Do I look at my portfolio? Okay, just pull all your customers' cybersecurity policies. And if you're not asking all your customers to have a cybersecurity policy, you're putting yourself in a difficult spot. So I'll pause there, Paco, and hand it back to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you hit on a very key piece, which actually plays into our next polling question is, how important it is to have a knowledgeable partner guiding you and your cybersecurity strategy. So for those that are attending, head over to the polls there. There's a question there to see how important it is to you. We'll wait a couple minutes because I'm curious to hear from those in the audience. And then I want to dive in with my own feedback as well, because I do think that there is a lot of importance to do that, where how do you guide your cybersecurity strategy?
Yeah. While we're waiting for that poll to come in, I couldn't agree more. You could be thinking, well, we're talking about increasing MRR, and why did Val bring up cybersecurity insurance? Oftentimes we're looking for, what is the tool that's going to cause my customer to think seriously about what I'm talking about? I think the day is set, or the day is gone where, you're going in and you're maybe trying to sell something that maybe they don't need. Cybersecurity is absolutely a necessity today. And so what you're doing is you're using that cybersecurity insurance policy conversation as a driver or leverage for your customer to do the right thing.
Right.
Cybersecurity insurance policies today are no longer allowing you to just do the bare minimum, because you're more risky to them. Yep. And so you're going to be paying premium prices every year over year. Whereas if you're going in and you've got the right tools, the right culture, the right things put in place, the right policies and procedures put in place, you're going to be less risky to them, and they're more apt to lower your premiums and give you a better premium price. Just like if you're a good driver, with driving insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have one mid-sized healthcare client that we just literally went through this process, and from what they had last year in terms of internal controls versus what we've been able to put in place, we've engaged with them about 5 months as a services provider by putting security tools in place. We cut their premium by 40% because of what they did not have last year, and they had to go with a higher risk carrier that basically paid less because they were risky. So we've taken a lot of the risk out of it. This year they qualified for more cybersecurity policies from different carriers, and as a result, they got a 40% savings in their premium because they've done the work just over the last several months to improve things dramatically. And that was, I mean, it's again, mid-sized organization, so that wasn't nickels for them,
right.
But that's just one example that literally we worked out last week when we got the new premiums in of what they were going to pay. The C-suite is celebrating because of the considerable drop from last year. And that's driven solely by looking at what they had to do in getting these pieces in place. So it's a net savings for them, even on top of some of the technologies they had to put in place.
And it's so important, right, on being able to, not only for us to be helped with our guiding of our cybersecurity strategy, but also us as being the trusted advisor to our particular client. And so the results are in for the poll is, yes, obviously it's very critical to rely on expert guidance because, my good friend Matt Lee has this philosophy of you don't know what you don't know. And there's 3 areas of that. There is what you don't know that you know of something there that you just don't understand yet. And then there is what you don't know that you don't even know exists. And that's the most dangerous part of it all. And so really understanding that, having the knowledgeable partner guiding you through that cybersecurity strategy is such a critical piece moving into that as well. Now, we did dive in a little bit on obviously the second point on navigating the complex landscapes of compliance and cybersecurity insurance. And one of the things that resonates with me is how me as with my MSP, we have specifically gone through on our conversations as we're for our prospects is basically saying, hey, look, our job is we know every business cares about what we call the triangle or the trinity of sales. Every business cares about increasing their sales, reducing their cost, and expanding their market share. We've taken the business of we are going to help you reduce your cost. And again, goes to topics like what Val said. Hey, if we implement these things, you're going to see the dividends later on, 40% drop on your insurance premium, being able to do the right thing so you don't have to avoid things that have been costing you money due to inefficiencies, things of that nature. But one of the things that I want to make sure that we do highlight is that not every cybersecurity insurance company is the same. And meaning even the coverage that they provide you as an MSP and to the small business as well. Can you, and I'll toss it to Jason really quick to see what you may have heard from partners or even from your own experience on, sometimes the coverage is a topic that, because everyone knows cybersecurity insurance, they may have a broker that does general liability, professional emissions, and then they know cyber insurance is another product. But how important, going back to a knowledgeable partner guiding to your cybersecurity strategy, can you share a little bit about how cybersecurity insurance and the coverage is such an important piece too?
Yeah, we have seen several cybersecurity insurance policies, and it's important to read your policy. And it's also, this is one area, is to get 3 or 4 or 5 quotes on coverage. And there's going to be really probably 3 that end up at the top, right? But we have seen cybersecurity insurance policies that literally they had $1 million or 2 million or 3 million of total coverage. But when you get down into the finer details, based on the incident or the actual cybersecurity breach, they may only pay out $100,000 towards that particular type of attack. And so what you need to know is not just at the top line, like, oh, we had $2, $3, $4 million worth of cybersecurity insurance, but you need to know what is the details below it. what, for ransomware, for extortion, for spread of malware, what is your incident response coverage? Am I, inside of the policy, am I forced to use the incident response company that is already got a deal brokered with the insurance company? Or can I go and pick my own that I have already vetted and maybe even made a pre-agreement with? So reading that policy is super important, because you need to know, this is kind of like where we've also focused with our customers on having a incident response tabletop exercise. It gets you into the mindset of like preparing for what may happen in the future, and then it gets you prepared. And those are two things that I would really focus in on as an organization.
How about you, Val?
Yeah. Tacking onto that, look, asking for a prospects or cybersecurity policy is not going to be something your average MSP is doing, right? So one, that's a differentiator by itself. And if you pick nothing else up from cybersecurity that doesn't suck today, take that away, right? Actually look at it. Because what are we trying to do? If you strip all this stuff away, cybersecurity, insurance, blah, 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 what are we trying to do? We're ultimately trying to reduce risk. And the business owner is trying to reduce risk. So you want to add MRR, then figure out ways to reduce risk or to bring things that can potentially bite them to the forefront so they can see it and address it and have a proper expectation before it sneaks up on them. And yes, much to Jason's point, just like you can buy sketchy car insurance that's really cheap and probably won't cover much, you can do the same thing with the cyber policy. So you absolutely need to read it, your own cyber policy, and certainly those of your clients, so you understand what they're on the hook for. I mean, for us, as an example, the Ascent, compliance portal, we build a custom framework around their cybersecurity policy and identify those specific controls that they need to have in place. Why do we do that? Simply because we don't want them to have a breach and then the insurance company have a loophole to write down a claim or refuse a claim because, oh, you said you had multi-factor authentication in place, but we don't see it. We look at the breach and now you're reporting something different. So yeah, we're not going to pay, or we're going to reduce the payment. I mean, these organizations are spending this money to have a backstop to protect them. So it's our job as their services provider to make sure that they understand what's in the policy. I know we're not insurance agents, but reading it would be a good start, and making sure that what they're being asked to cover on their end is in place so that their bases are covered in the event of a breach. I mean, I can't express that enough. That's why we build custom frameworks around this, because it's terrible to watch a customer go through an experience where they have a claim. Oh, no problem. I've got a cyber policy, and the policy they refuse to pay. I mean, it can be devastating to a small business.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to add there was the two of you, I never made it, but we're in Newark, New Jersey, and I was able to pick up something remotely, which was the insurance policy speaker that day said that like 32 or 33% of Office 365 users had MFA enabled. That is coming from the cybersecurity insurance policy experts at the insurance companies. The insurance companies are getting smarter, and they're realizing that folks out in the space, technologists, MSPs, MSSPs, are not enforcing to those customers the right things to do. So as you look as a trusted advisor to your customers, you want to say, hey, you pose risk to yourself, and something as simple as enabling multi-factor authentication across all of the accounts inside of your organization. If the insurance company finds out that you didn't have that enabled and then they have to pay for the claim, they may cancel you afterwards. Mm-hmm. Right. So,
or to write down or deny the claim. That's one of the core requirements is MFA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's a big piece that you just mentioned, right? Is that, you know, we have to be involved, we being the MSPs, is that you like, if you should be having this conversation, because not only for the fact of just knowing what their coverage is and how you can help them with that, and I'll get into that in a second, but really, are they filling out forms without you knowing, saying you're doing things that you suggested to them and they're denying, and they're just saying, hey, because I want the cheaper policy, I'm going to go ahead and say yes, and then it ends up coming back to you. I mean, there are insurance companies that are asking for MSPs names and company names. They are building a database. They are understanding who is doing what, whether you are partnering with them or not. And so these are very important things where if you don't get ahead of this, you're going to be as surprised as the client is going to be surprised if something were to come up, right? And this could be for a wide range of things, meaning a client said, no, we're not going to do that. A client can claim that you never provided them that explanation, or how important something was to take care of, such as like having X amount of accounts that are no longer active. Hey, we need to get rid of these, but you didn't mention the number of accounts, because that, you know, by telling them the number of accounts, now it's you've explained the gravity of how important it is to do the action, things of that nature, of where you really need to get ahead of it and have those conversations with your client. If you're just charging them an MRR and just, you know, I haven't heard from them in almost 6 months, you're doing a disservice not only to the client, but also to yourself as well. But the other piece that I wanted to add on to that as well is, you know, for those that are listening and say, okay, guys, I understand that I need to get to do this. I have a broker, but how do I know that he knows what he's talking about, right? And from there, I think that you would just have to talk to your colleagues, talk to the community that you have. There are many other companies that are out there that other MSPs have built rapport, if you don't know of any. You know, Jason mentioned one, my good friend who did the presentation. He's actually no longer at that company, but, you know, that's a great source for them as well. So I won't name drop any particular brokers that are in the IT industry, but talk to your colleagues, talk to your trusted MSP friends. If you don't have anybody that you don't have someone that's locally to you, ask the community. You know, there are plenty of Facebook groups, a lot of great communities out there, plenty of events that you can just have those side conversations on. Look, I'm a little worried about this. Like, we have coverage, but I don't know what I'm reading. What's your best partner? What is your best strategic partner to help me through this process? So that's my advice for that. And anything else that we want to add on to cyber insurance before we move on to
I'll tack one thing onto that. If we run across something like that ourselves from Whitehat's perspective for one of our clients, we'll issue a risk memo and have them sign it that we've talked about it, right? So basically, there's a recommendation we've made. They have elected not to go forward with it for whatever reason. Then if we feel like it rises to that bar, for instance, MFA or cybersecurity insurance is one of those things, then we make it a requirement in our contract, but we'll have them sign a risk memo that spells that out, that we laid this out, you've elected not to do it, and get a signature from them, so that you know, we've at least, you know, I can't say it's necessarily CYA, but sure, we've at least brought it to the attention enough that somebody had to put a signature to a piece of paper, and we'll certainly go back and fish that thing out of the archives if necessary, if we all get forgetful 6 months later.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you just one additional point is that being able to understand moving forward on, you know, again, sending a risk memo, being able to get ahead of something as well. You're showing, obviously, in case something, you know, God forbid, you were brought into court, or you were brought to saying that you were the cause of X, you have that paper trail to say, look, we made our attempts, and really it's what you can prove is what really will help you, and what you have documented for any type of mitigation of risk. I think a phrase that I love to use is, we're not in the business of mitigating risk. We're in the business of making our clients as defensible as possible, so that they're not deemed negligent to their end user. That is what the business we are in. And I think a lot of businesses, when you say it that way, they understand how that resonates with them. Now, I love talking about this one, this next step, because this seems to be what I like to call the shiny object syndrome that a lot of MSPs tend to get. And this topic's, how it's worded here, obviously conserving time and resources by sidestepping the ceaseless research loop and pinpointing a solution that genuinely works. AKA, you're constantly trying to find something that's better and trying to figure out what is the right tool for you. Now, Jason, I want to throw it to you because, I think we had a great conversation when you had your event, I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, and how everyone is always chasing for that silver bullet. They're trying to figure out what's going on. But what they don't understand is that sometimes when you rely on foundational pieces, and then I'll go to Val next about this, on relying on frameworks, you really can understand what you do need versus what pinpointing a silver bullet or a solution that's going to genuinely work. Can you share a little bit of insights on what I consistently see as a problem nowadays with MSPs?
Yeah, one thing that we just sort of hear over and over and over again in the space is like, well, we chose this product or this tool set because it was bundled, right? And if it's bundled, I get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things all bundled together. And it makes my life easier as an MSP or MSSP. And then it allows us to conserve time, and we push these agents down and blah, blah, blah. You can sort of connect the dots and like maybe some companies out in the space, and I'm just not going to name names, but what happens is that you have to think about it from this perspective as well. Sometimes bundled tools are not always the best. You might get 1 tool or 2 tools that are a subject matter expertise in the space, and then you get these other tools that are just okay, right? A thing that we really strive for inside of BitLyft is when we're doing log management and SIM as a service for customers, is making sure that it lines up with the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And really, that should be like sort of first and foremost is look at a good framework like MITRE ATT&CK or CIS and say, we aspire to be like this. It's a journey. And what I feel like more people are saying today, which is the right statement, is cybersecurity is a journey. And you actually may never arrive. And we have to be okay with this mindset that we're on a journey that's always changing. The criminal and the criminal attack vectors are always changing. And so we have to make sure that not only ourselves, our mindset, the culture that we've built inside of our team is of this nature that last year we did this, and we did it to sort of fight the attack and the vectors at that time. But we also have to realize a year later, things are different. And the cybersecurity journey has evolved again on us. And so rather than be discouraged, we just have to realize that the industry that we're in is just always evolving, and it's at a rapid pace. So what we try and do, great people like Paco and other people that are at the conferences that are sharing genuine information, no sales, right? Like, we're literally educating the space. These are the pros and the cons of maybe tools and solutions, but also asking yourself, like, what do you aspire to? What does your organization have to achieve? I love where Val and the Ascent portal team has gone with the product, because you literally have to say, hey, what does your organization aspire to do? Are you FDIC? Are you HIPAA? Are you high tech? In the healthcare space, like, what are we doing? Right. And then once you know what you're doing and what you're going after, well, then you can start to wrap around, the security controls and the tools and put those things in place. But if not, you're just going to be on this endless research loop, like we're calling it here. Right. We used to use a term a little while back, and in some cases I still hear it, but it's like always on this search for the next tool. And it's you're not really going to achieve. What you're doing is you're wasting a lot of time. And,
Right.
and that sort of bad behavior, what we're going to do is we're going to create gaps. Hey, this tool was for this tool was for this tool was for this.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't well thought out,
Right. Now, Val, I know that you obviously have a very big proponent of obviously of frameworks and being able to adhere to some type of guidance. Can you share a little bit about how, even working toward a framework is going to be a better suit of time versus chasing, as I mentioned before, that shiny object, that silver bullet
Sure.
that's being claimed from the marketing that's done for that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll start with my time as CIO of a healthcare system. I had an array of security products. I'm challenged with meeting HIPAA, high tech, and high trust at the tail end of that. And I had security products where I had 3 products doing the same thing, and I'd have again bundles or whatever where it's like looking at you think of a steel fence keeping the bad guys out. Really, what I had was lattice, right? There'd be holes all in my fence because there was always something that wasn't covered. And I'd have some things covered 2 and 3 times. So incredibly frustrating. So, it's, I don't know if it's a plug for Ascent, but essentially we got there. We started to solve that problem by understanding what do we need to do. And what I mean by that is taking the MITRE attack framework. There's basically 295 different tactics that bad actors use to come after organizations that have been mapped. And in general, we've got about 16 tools, plus or minus, on the cybersecurity side to try to defend against and keep those bad actors out from whatever combination of tactics they're going to use to try to get in. Okay. Now, what do you buy? What goes in your stack, right? I mean, I would say 5 years ago, good question. Today, your low bar is your cybersecurity insurance policy, making sure that you're meeting those, again, 6 to 13 odd controls that are in there. By control is multi-factor authentication. That is making sure that we're doing anti-phishing training, and there's an array of others, right? I will not belabor this by going through all of them, but that's your low bar. Now, what do you put in place for the customer? And I would say looking at a framework, and if you're not familiar with frameworks, there's, again, HIPAA, high tech, high trust for healthcare. There's ISO 27001 for could be a services organization, could be a company wanting to do work with a small company that wants to do work with a public company. FFIEC deals with banks, but there's a lot of frameworks that touch different companies. And then there's cybersecurity insurance, which touches them all. And we leverage Ascent to help us figure out what we need to do. And what I mean by that is we go through a baseline assessment, understand what controls are in place for that customer. What do they need to be in compliance with? Yes, we need multi-factor authentication. Okay, then that tells me that I don't need to go worrying about what the latest, greatest whiz-bang feature is. I need to go look for MFA because it is written in their cybersecurity policy and it's in a framework. So this is something they need to do and or have to do. So we go that route in terms of picking the products that are in our cybersecurity stack and what we're going to deploy and when. So again, cybersecurity policy, baseline.
Yeah. And
then leveraging some sort of framework, if it is only the cybersecurity insurance policy, depending on, again, what business they're in, there's one or several, we'll leverage Ascent to identify those things that need to get put in place so that you're not buying everything under the sun. You have limited resources. You've got limited gray matter between your tech's ears to figure out what they can wrap their arms around, what you need a third-party vendor for, what you need Jason's team for. So you've got limited gray matter, you've got limited time, and you've got limited resources. So pick carefully, right? I don't want to jump tool to tool. I want to solve the problems that are in front of me. Now, am I going to solve all the world's problems right away? No. As exactly what Jason said, this is a journey. And what I'm doing is mitigating risk and making sure my customer is better protected. And I use that as as the roadmap for each individual customer to figure out what to buy, what to put in place, what to incorporate into our stack. So I'm buying the things that turn into revenue, and I'm buying the things that I can support, because I can't support it all. I still, Whitehat's give or take 50 people, but there's still skill sets that we don't have in-house to the depth that we need them. So we still have to rely on partners and vendors to plug those holes. So that's as much of the strategy as anything. So if I was going to distill that, so I've felt like I've run amok. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get your stack in place based off of a cybersecurity policy, then use something like a control framework relevant to your customer. And you can communicate with us and ask questions about that. Happy to fill in. I'll spare those. And let that be the guide in terms of what you need for your own business to protect yourself. Because we, by the way, pay the highest premiums in cybersecurity insurance of anybody is services providers.
Mm-hmm.
So it behooves you to save money by getting controls in place. But secondarily, let that be the guide in terms of what you're buying and what you're building into your stack. So you've got a way to ease into it, into a way that you can support, you can manage, and you can pay for while taking care of your customers so you can grow together.
And I think the biggest piece to that is, Jason, did you have something to add on to that?
I think Val is touching on a key thing here that maybe just I'll quickly highlight is if you are doing more than you're capable of and your customer sees that, right? Like you stated, Val, Whitehat's about plus or minus 50 people, right? Well, if you're an MSP or MSSP and you're 20, 30, 40, 50 people, you can't go to your customer and make it look like you're doing all things to them. Because at the end of the day, they're going to ask the golden question: how are you and your team able to achieve all of this when you're the size that you are, right? And the honest answer is the best answer in this case. I would encourage you to ask yourselves, what are you a subject matter expert at, and what are you not? And the things that you're not, don't go try going down that bunny hill that's attractive, because it's only going to lead in regrets, right? You really want to focus in on what you're a subject matter expert at, what you guys can achieve as a team, and let partnerships come in and fill the gap for subject matter expertise.
I think the biggest piece to that is to understand that, as you're doing your research, so that it's not a ceaseless loop, make sure you're researching the solution for the problem, not the solution of a tool that will take care of what you feel is the problem. That's why it's important for the frameworks. It's important for being able to really just identify what are you truly trying to resolve and solve for not only yourself, but for your for your client as well. We have another poll here we want to touch on is, how would you describe your current cybersecurity solution? Do you feel that it's adequate, challenging, not meeting your needs, or you're unsure? So we'll take a couple minutes there to answer that poll there. And then from there, we're going to dive into any questions that anybody might have. I know that we've had a very insightful conversation. We've touched on those three. We can continue to keep that conversation going, but I would love to hear more about where you feel about your current solutions and any questions you may have for our Q&A as well. We'll wait here a couple minutes there. Looks like we got comment here. Looks like challenging to manage seems to be floating to the top, which I can agree. Especially the more tools you have, the more harder it is to make sure that all the boxes are checked, and also making sure if you have multiple dashboards. I think there's a phrase that my old business partner used to tell me was, everyone is chasing the single pane of glass, and it's all a single pane in the you know what. So it's something where it's
a pane in the glass, all right. You betcha. You betcha.
And challenging to manage is definitely something to go from there. So appreciate those that have voted. We will go ahead and wait a couple minutes too. And for any questions you might have, I know we went over a lot. Hopefully this has found you some value. We want to make sure that we continue providing that value to you. So we'll wait a couple minutes here for any questions, and then we will go from there.
Now, I did some math, and then I wished I hadn't done it. But while I was serving as a CIO of how many skill sets do we actually need to run an IT department. Now I'm looking around at the time of a staff of 6 and then outsourced partners. But in that particular healthcare system, we needed 120 different skill sets, somewhere between, jack of all trades to full on master to run that ship day to day. And effectively we had, six-ish full-time people, an array of partners and part-timers and other ones to try to close those gaps. And I mean, that was just, it's just IT, just, make it work. Well, no, it's absolutely, now we got all this cybersecurity stuff. And this was before we really started having to delve deeply into some technologies that didn't even exist at that time. That is the challenge of what do you maintain in-house? I don't care if you're a one-man band, a two-man band, 30, 40, 50. There's things that it makes sense for you to carry in-house. There's things that you need to go find and outsource and go find a partner for. And then there's things you need just the one-off consultant that you need this skill set once a year and you just need to know where it is, but you don't need to payroll it so that you can survive. So it is a constant balancing. And it is certainly a pain in the glass to work out because it all gets rolled up under, well, it's just IT. It's IT, right? It's just, yeah. No, I'm sorry. My level 1 support desk guy is not going to solve your intrusion detection problem and deploy an MDR and make all that work. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think the missing. No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Paco.
No, I was gonna say, I think for every services business, there's always that, oh, it's just that, right? So like I can think of, marketing services, obviously IT services, they just think it's plug in X and it will work. And I think there's a disservice on both ends of both education on what we do. And then on the other side of receiving that they feel the value is there as well. So I think that's something that we definitely need to progress more and that challenging to manage.
Yeah, I think what I have been hearing in actually at the last couple of MSP events, one of the positive things that I'm starting to see and hear is MSPs and MSSPs starting to talk about, we're really good at this, and so we're going to push into this, and we're going to use partnerships and outsourced for these other areas that we don't have the skill set, we don't have the expertise in. And I think it's so important, Val, what you're bringing up is we've got to have this realization that one department just can't handle 120 different things, 120 different avenues. Otherwise, we're going to just, if we're not being honest with ourselves, we're going to continue to burn out the folks, the peers that we care and love for on our teams, right? And so if we don't pay attention to mental health inside of the organization and the company within that department, and we don't care for, the people that are actually helping us execute the strategy and the plan that we've put together, well, then we're doing a disservice to the people. And then inherently, they're probably doing a disservice to our security because they're just not able to carry out what we thought, right? So there has to be this honesty that where we come around, how are we actually going to achieve this, right? So I think there's merit to that. Actually, putting it out in front of us and saying, hey, this is everything that we're trying to do. What makes sense for us to do inside of our team? What makes sense to partner and outsource? Whether that's managed detection and response, whether it's vulnerability management, whether it's EDR management. Those are just to name a 3 that, Val, there's 120 on your list, right?
So really quick, because you actually just dived into a question that was just asked right now, is when selecting an MDR partner, what should MSPs look for and what are red flags to stay away from when selecting an MDR partner? Because I think, as you just mentioned, we just rattled off all the those acronyms of MDR, XDR, EDR. obviously trying to find a managed detection and response partner, what's the best way, or what is something to look for and just be cautious of when selecting one?
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of them in the space. One of the major things that scares me is people are just automatically gravitating to MDR, XDR because of the newness of the acronym. And when you really lift the hood and you get to like, what are you actually doing inside of your service and your product delivery? And you come to find out that they're only ingesting like 1 or 2 log sources from your entire environment. Like one MDR provider that I found out about a couple of weeks ago, they're only ingesting the logs from the EDR that's on the endpoint. And I'm like, well, what about the Office 365 logs? What about the firewall logs? What about the cloud logs? What about the SaaS logs? Oh, well, those we're not ingesting those. Well, like, why not? Those are still attack vectors. Go back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Look at that. You cannot call yourself an MDR provider today if you are not doing log ingestion from those things. Because you're literally ruining the name of MDR if you are not ingesting the logs from everything that you're using, endpoints and all of the rest that I've named. So I would encourage folks that are out there looking for an MDR to look for something that's complete. You have to look for what they're saying. You also have to look for what they're not saying. What are they not talking about? So that's my encouragement.
Yeah, you're looking for integrations. Basically, look at your stack of stuff, and when you're talking to an MDR partner, see if they can ingest that data, the logs from the stuff that you have or that your customers have, so that you can get some good intelligence out of it. If they're not looking at it, then you're not going to get any good intelligence out of it. I'd say that is a great point, Jason. That's just like cyber policies, right? Some are better than others. Some of these are better than others. Are they going to look at the majority or all of the systems that you've got in your environment to look for anomalies? Or are they going to look at 2 or 3 and leave the rest exposed? That's a fantastic place to start as far as an MDR from my perspective. If they're not covering the products that you've got and can't ingest them directly, then there's not anybody sitting there looking at it. That's the same thing as you just casually scrolling into the log file and just, going up and down the page looking for something that sticks out. It's the equivalent, which isn't meeting the need of what the heck you're looking at an MDR for in the first place.
Now, another question that came in was, which we get asked a lot, and this kind of dives into, making sure that we don't shortchange not only the solutions we're trying to find, right, because we're vetting those vendors, but also how we're providing that portfolio for cybersecurity. But as an MSP, we're always asked, well, how do we save money with cybersecurity? So I think that could be viewed on both ends, right? How, as an MSP, how do we incorporate tools that we need for a particular framework, but at the same time, maybe we are utilizing tools, and I find that some of us are being emotional with those tools and not really understanding that, hey, there's probably a better opportunity that could save you a resource by either meaning saving time with money, saving time, saving resources. What is your kind of perspective on, as an MSP, we get asked, how do we save money with a cybersecurity for a client? What is your suggestion on that, or what's your feedback or opinion on that statement?
So for me, that's fairly straightforward, because this is something we're challenged with all the time. How do you take a finite number of people and stretch them across a maximum number of skill sets and a maximum number of clients, right? So that takes us back there. So first and foremost, I look at it from the perspective of, what skill sets do I need to take care of my customers most of the time? For instance, if I don't need a telephone guy, if I'm not in the telephone space, or I've got one little customer asking for telephone help, I'm not going to go put an FTE in place. I'm not going to go spend the money there. If I'm looking at it from the other side, I'm going to, I've been surrounded by Ascent for 7 years. So I'm going to fundamentally leverage that to help me save money, because I'm going to go look at cybersecurity policies, right? What security tools can I put in place to reduce hard spend for the organizations that we're working with? How can I make sure, in that particular case, since insurance came up a bunch today, what can I do to make sure that if we have a breach, we have what we need to have in place, so I'm not beyond my deductibles effectively for what I've got to pay in the event of a breach. It's not catastrophic. Where do I need to spend my money, right? I mean, when I was at about 3 events ago, I was told there's give or take 1,900 cybersecurity products in the market of one kind or another. Now, that's not unique. I mean, that's 20 of this and 10 of that or what have you. But what the heck do you buy, right? So there's saving money there too, and understanding what do I need? What is my risk? What is the need that I need to fill either for my services provider, myself as a services provider, or my customer, and what effectively do I need to have in place to continue to function? Because you can absolutely secure yourself right out of business. I mean, I told customers, well, how do I stay absolutely 100% secure? Well, it's just disconnect the internet, right? And don't let anybody answer the phone. You'll be fine. So anyway, I'll pause there. Jason, jump in there.
Yeah, I think that I think first of all, people come to us and ask us like, hey, how do we reduce our spend in cybersecurity and save money or optimize that? And it's like, we got to do this very carefully, because I use the analogy, if you're thinking about saving money personally, do you go home and like disconnect your cameras at your home? Do you maybe take the door locks off the doors and maybe go sell them, or do you stop improving the security around your own home, right? And what we have to do is we have to realize we rely on this business that we all show up to every day to be alive and well, functioning healthy, to support our incomes, our home, our family, and our life, right? And the moment that we start to expose that to risk because we want to save money, we have to realize that we're increasing the risk of that business being more vulnerable. That's point one. The second side of this is a optimization. So I do love where your head was going there, Val. It is a optimization, but I think it's a whiteboarding session. I love whiteboarding. I think that it's so important that says like, hey, let's take an hour or two and let's ask ourselves, what are we really good at? And what are we not really good at? Where do we strive as an organization forward at moving the ball down the field? And where do we not? Where are we fumbling? And that optimization, that important conversation is going to help you identify areas that you're successful at in the business and areas that you're not. I think that is an important conversation to have, because it's going to lead you to how do we optimize things internally, not only for the MSP, but also for their customers. Great point around Val. Like, if it does not make sense to have a phone person, VoIP or whatever, I just see some of these MSPs doing everything underneath the sun. And I sit back and I think about, how are you doing that successfully? Like,
or efficiently.
Yeah. And so who is going to be the person that looks at you with the honest to God conversation that says, are you doing too much? Like, where's the line in the sand? And so I just think we've got to have that person in our life that says, are you extending yourself? Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we're going to round out, because I think that's the best way to really end off this webinar, because not only can you decide, you want to attack and figure out how do you get into being able to help mitigate that risk for your clients. That is a inventory of what I like to call fourth quarter living. This is the greatest time to be able to do that. Make sure you're doing your SWOT analysis, whiteboard where you're trying to go, figure out what's your plans, and really figuring out, is my offerings acceptable? Is my offerings the ability to be efficient? And if there are things that need to be let go, that's okay. change is a little bit scary. Change is hard, but when you get through it, I think it's a big opportunity for that. But gentlemen, I really appreciate, obviously, the conversation we've had today. For those that you are listening, we appreciate you listening as well. On the bottom right-hand corner, there is a handout for you to take on as a digital download. It's under handouts. If you don't happen to see it, it's under apps handout. That is a joint collateral from both of my panelists here from their respective companies. Again, thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you both. And having BitLyft, Whitehat, and Ascent Portal here having this conversation. So with that, I think it's a fine way to end off, unless there's any final words from you two before we end off here.
I would say, Paco, thank you for a webinar that did not suck. That's what I would say.
Yeah, Paco, I would thank you. I appreciate you and your time, as well as you, Val. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And I hope that the viewers and listeners today also had some takeaways from us. We love sharing with the community and giving back. I know that's both of your hearts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a give back. If there's something here we're saying or products or respective things that we're doing make sense, fantastic, happy to help, but really want to help you guys avoid some of the bear traps that we have all stepped in, right? This is why you don't see any of us in shorts, because there is scar tissue where we've been snapped by bear traps all on our shins, all over the place. So
that's right.
I would like to help you avoid just some of the gymnastics, and hopefully have your own cybersecurity framework that doesn't suck.
Absolutely. As you all mentioned, definitely engage with all of us. We are all on LinkedIn. We will be in Miami at the Fontainebleau next week at the Channel Futures. If you want to meet us in person, definitely. We do not bite. We would love to share, and we all love to talk. And then you can also talk to Val about what does he mean by cookies and the conversation we had prior to this webinar. With that, I will leave everyone to their day. Thank you so much for tuning in, and appreciate you. And hopefully you did get some value out of this. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Paco. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.